Fetch playing Bumblebots, pipe climbing Superbugs, and meal replacing Soylent, plus this day in history with the evil empire, and our song of the day by At the Drive-In on your Morning Monarchy for March 8th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to whenever, wherever you are in the world for listener-supported media that's been online since 9/11/05. You never heard an ad. You've never seen any of that stuff, AdSense or otherwise. I'm James Evan Pilato, coming to you, as always, from the Pacific Northwest studios. Hope you're doing well whenever, wherever, whatever cube, whatever garden, whatever car, wherever you are. We're glad that you're spending some mind time here with us. We are brought to you by you. MediaMonarchy.com/support has the Bitcoin, the snail mail, the PayPal, and the Patreon. And a huge thanks to Andy W., our latest patron, on Patreon.com/MediaMonarchy. It makes it very easy to raise or lower your monthly support. PayPal's constantly making things difficult, switching things around. Patreon.com/MediaMonarchy makes it really easy. We've got one guy who very generously cranks his support up to $100 sometimes. Then he turns it back down to a regular amount. If you need to adjust and raise or lower your Patreon, it's pretty easy to do that. And again, we appreciate your support over there. That gives us the monthly budgeted support that we really need. And as we go forward into 2017, I'm going to get probably a lot more transparent about this is what I need. This is the mark I need to hit. I need a new this and that. We're going to get new gear. We're going to get more transparent. And we're going to keep moving and grooving our way forward. Like I say, if you can give a little, I can give a lot, my friends. Hump Day, Women's Day. Hope you're doing well. It is Food World Order Day. It's where we talk about food, health, and environment news. Food World Order, a phrase I coined on air many years ago and realized, ooh, that's good stuff. Bought the website immediately, and we've been using the hashtag to talk about food, health, and environment news for several years now. And that's what we talk about on Wednesdays. Monday's world news, Tuesday's tech, Wednesday's food, Thursday is weird, and Friday is the entertainment industrial complex we love to hate so much. Let's glance at some of the breaking lamestream news before we get into your delicious, nutritious menu of Food World Order stories. They say the battle unfolding between the White House and the FBI is truly unprecedented. And if you believe anything of what you see going on right now is truly unprecedented, then you haven't been paying attention. Shocker. Senator Tim Kaine's son among several arrested after protesters disrupt Trump rally in Minnesota. They call that a counter-protest. I don't know exactly if it's a protest if you're setting off fireworks, lighting smoke bombs, and spraying chemical irritants at people. I mean, you probably all saw the meme, you all saw the sign of what Berkeley was and what Berkeley is, literally burning a sign that says free speech on it. So the Purple Revolution rolls on as we are watching with a keen eye of what's going on from the powers that shouldn't be. Again, this is all divide and conquer action. We do not vote for major party presidents. We don't believe in the two-lame party system. We'll point it out, and we'll continue to hopefully try and keep the empire honest, like Clyde Lewis says. As the D's change to R's, but the deep state agenda seems to roll forward. Hey, Apple and Samsung say they are patching vulnerabilities mentioned in the WikiLeaks dump that we talked about a little bit yesterday. That is Vault 7. And again, we are here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time to give you an hour of the real news. And we'll begin and end with a little bit of Soylent on your Food World Order Day. Soylent gets an AI spokeswoman, courtesy of course, one of the most important consent manufacturers we have here, not only in America, it lives right here in the Pacific Northwest. Soylent, as you may remember, and we've talked about it on these shows, the meal replacement brand designed to eliminate the hassles of regular eating, is getting a fictional artificially intelligent spokeswoman in its first work from Wieden+Kennedy's tech-focused lodge group. Wieden+Kennedy. Massive advertising firm up here in the Pacific Northwest. They pretty much do all your Nike propaganda. You know those great Old Spice ads? Yeah, they did that too. If there's any ridiculous garbage advertising propaganda that people like to talk about at the water cooler, chances are it came from Wieden+Kennedy. Now, I like to point this out a lot. People see Portland and Oregon as this adult playground. But most of the folks play at the mercy of Nike, Intel, Microsoft, and other multinational corporations that generally perpetrate the problems that the types of employees they have like to get mad about every 4 to 8 years when they want to pay attention. So, sidebar on that. The character, Trish, will appear to run a virtual store on Soylent's website and play a part in a mix of broadcast, digital, social, and other marketing as the brand sets out to broaden its consumer base, according to the company. Now, I couldn't actually find any advertising yet to play. I wanted to play some video, play some audio. Still, the company is not abandoning its tech-savvy followers. Trish has a Bitcoin-based store, Soy Route, and it's on the dark web, where Soylent aims to sell rare products, including mystery flavor Soylent, a beef-flavored kit, and golden Soylent, signed by the CEO. Trish is also, of course, set to make an appearance at the upcoming massive propaganda fest we call South by Southwest. Soylent, as the story goes, was started by CEO Rob Reinhardt and others who were frustrated with buying, preparing, and eating not-so-healthy foods while busy working at our new tech overlord startups. It began with crowdfunding in 2013 and started shipping shit in 2014. The LA-based company proclaims its mission is to, quote, expand access to quality nutrition through food system innovation. So far, the biggest following it appears to have is among tech-savvy startup workers and others looking to streamline their daily grind of being little Eichmanns working to build, again, our new tech overlords. Drinking a pre-mixed bottle of Soylent drink, sipping Soylent Coffeeist. Is that the word that I'm saying? Cofffiest. Or mixing Soylent powder with water frees up the time it takes to buy and prepare food or go out to eat. Do you remember we talked about the new massive autism wings that Microsoft is building for autistic workers? This seems like this brave new world. This fits right into that. Oh, I'm sorry we poisoned and handicapped you. You know, garbage water, GMOs, radiation, vaccines, all of it. Basically creating a new retarded army. Sorry. That's what it is. And they love pushing this GMO garbage. Hello, I'm Trish, an artificial intelligence created by Soylent. I'm here to help. Soylent is convenient nutrition in bottle technology. Ha ha ha. So that's how we set the table for your Food World Order edition. Kind of carries over from the tech news. And I've got a story here that I don't actually know the answer to, but I'm somewhat familiar with it because perhaps like you, played the old 8-bit NES growing up. As Nintendo prepares to launch its latest gaming console, the Switch, on Thursday, which you can already see people already freaking out about. Will this be the latest version of Pokemon Go Eat Your Neighbor's Brains? We'll see what the latest mass movements are. Many of the people who've managed to get their hands on one aren't busy playing the latest games or testing out the console's unique format. Instead, lots of people are just licking their video games. To be more accurate, people are licking the game cartridge that comes with the Switch in an exact reversal of what Nintendo intended to happen. According to IGN, the tech company coated the cartridges, which are roughly the size of a SIM card, in a bittering agent called denatonium benzoate, which is also used in rat poison and antifreeze to deter humans' consumption. The chemical is also used to deter nail biting. Nintendo used the chemical as a safety measure to stop small children and pets from eating the cartridges. So again, if you know how large a SIM card is, as I've, of course, popped them out of all my fondle slabs, it's very small. While there's no adverse health effects from consuming denatonium benzoate, I'm sure, it does leave a sour, bitter taste that lasts for hours, according to taste testers from the BBC News, Quartz, and IGN. But even as more and more people take to social media to let others know how bad the cartridges taste, more and more people seem determined to try it in what some are already calling the Nintendo Cartridge Challenge. Similar to the saltine or nutmeg challenge, I suppose. What about the cinnamon challenge? What about the white helmet mannequin challenge? It was like someone poured a bottle of concentrated new car scent into my mouth, one taster told the BBC. Yeah, guess what? That shit is poison. All those scents, all those fragrances. I mean, I love sharing sometimes with friends. I think it's even from CNN. Dryer sheets make you stupider. So we used to blow the air out of the Nintendo cartridges to kind of get them to work, and even sort of because you wanted a little bit of almost that moisture that, for whatever God knows reason, made your Nintendo cartridges work better. I guess as I got older, I learned it's because of the way they sort of front-loaded in the NES. You pushed it in and then pushed it down, so the connectors it's just kind of built poorly. So I think the new versions where the games kind of go down into the top is actually a better way to make the connection. Yes, I'm giving you video game news I hardly know anything about. It is Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, giving you a Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy as we look at food, health, and environment news, which is increasingly fraught with giant technological overlays. Now, you want to get into just a fantastic use of time and resources and energy? How about teaching bumblebees to play fetch?
We're going to talk about bumblebees now. Their brains may be the size of sesame seeds, but apparently they're really nimble thinkers. Who knew? Research has shown they can count, they can make decisions by weighing uncertainty, and scientists writing in the journal Science now say bees can learn complicated tasks just by observing a demonstration. Here's NPR's Ray Ellen Bichelle.
Clint Perry is interested in probing the limits of animal intelligence.
Yeah, I want to know, how does the brain do stuff? How does it behave? How does it make decisions? How does it keep memory?
And how big does a brain need to be in order to do all those things? Perry is a cognitive biologist at Queen Mary University of London, and recently he's been focused on how bees think. He does this by designing little puzzles for the bees to solve.
Test them on something that is far removed from anything that they would see in their normal lives,
to see if bees can learn a complicated new skill just by observing it.
Essentially, the first experiment was, can bees learn to roll a ball?
Perry and his colleagues built a platform with a ball sitting in the middle of it. If a bee went up to the ball, it would find that it could access a reward, sugar water. One by one, bumblebees walked onto the platform, explored a bit, and then slurped up the sugar water in the middle.
Then what we did is move the ball away near the edge. The bees came out, looked at the center, didn't have reward. Went to the ball, didn't have reward. They had to figure out that they needed to move the ball from the edge to the center, and then they'd get reward.
If a bee couldn't figure it out, the researchers would demonstrate using a puppet, a plastic bee on a stick, to scoot the ball from the edge of the platform to the center.
And bees that saw this demonstration learned very quickly how to solve the task. They started rolling the ball back into the center. They got better over time.
In a second experiment, the researchers found that bees that were able to watch another live bee do the trick first learned even faster. Some even found ways to get the sugar water more quickly.
It wasn't monkey see, monkey do. They improved on the strategy that they saw.
How can bees do all this? Well, Perry says, it's not just about the number of neurons in a brain. It's the connections between them. Research is showing more and more that animals, including tiny insects, can learn quickly if their brains are wired right. And with enough time, a bumblebee could totally learn to play fetch.
Brought to you by the amiable warmongers at National Public Radio. Could a bumblebee learn to play fetch? Yeah, if you bribe them with a bunch of sugar, as we've talked about on these shows again and again and again. There's not much humans or other animals won't do to become addicted to sugar, like the rats who will immediately, continually hit the button to get sugar until they die. And like we've talked about, Zuckerberg means sugar cube, as people go again and again and again to social media at the death of everything else they may have in their life. But that's okay. They're unveiling the new Facebook Snuff Live, bringing you full color murders. What does Christine Chubbuck say? Well, I'll say you're listening to the Morning Monarchy, Food World Order edition. So the bees are all dying because of pesticides. So what do? We create robo-bees to hopefully, maybe, pollinate. And we've also got other bees learning how to play fetch by bribing them with sugar water. I'm sure it's good high fructose corn syrup sugar water, too. Hey, let's go from Bumblebots to Superbugs. For years, researchers have tracked the source of hospital outbreaks back to superbug splashing sinks. For instance, researchers found that an outbreak in a Canadian hospital that spanned from 2004 to 2006 was caused by multi-drug resistance Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Pseudomonas aeruginosa that was breeding and splashing out of the drains of hand-wash sinks in patient areas. 36 patients were infected in the outbreak, 12 of whom died of their sink-spawned infection. Investigators found that with the water running, the sinks could launch deadly germs at least a meter away. Despite the discoveries, researchers have puzzled over how sinks become superbug spreaders and how to keep them from doing it. In the case of the Canadian hospital outbreak, no amount of cleaning or disinfectants fixed the problem. The hospital only ended the outbreak by renovating the sinks so they weren't so splashy. Sounds more like a hardware fix than a software fix, which is, again, almost going to always be easier. Why don't you solve the problems with the pesticides instead of trying to create new software to make less bugs do more things? Asking a lot of sidebar questions. Now, with a new study published in Applied in Environmental Microbiology, researchers may have finally answered superbugs' sink-dwelling skills. They survive in pea traps and can quickly climb pipes. More specifically, researchers at the University of Virginia found that bacteria can happily colonize a sink's pea trap. That's the letter P. And then sneak back up the pipe and into the drain by forming a protective creeping film called a biofilm on the plumbing. Once they get to the drain, they only need a burst of water to scatter up into the sink and surrounding touchable surfaces. In their experiments, which use sinks modeled after the ones commonly found in UVA's medical center, the researchers found that bacteria could launch up to about 3/4 of a meter. This work helps to more clearly define the mechanism and risk of transmission from a wastewater source to hospitalized patients in a world with increasingly antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which can thrive in wastewater environments and cause infections in vulnerable patients, the authors, led by molecular epidemiologist Amy Mathers, concluded. So grab this story from Ars Technica. Turning the water on in the sink can launch pipe-climbing superbugs. And I am speaking your language. Some of you out there working on our pipes. You get no respect, I tells you. And the other part from the chat, is it just me, or is it because hospitals are kind of full of sick people? Yeah, you might have guessed we've been talking about that a little bit at home with the so-called health care industry that we're dealing with. You want to get sick? Go to a hospital. You want to get stupid? Go to a school. You want to lose your soul? Go to their churches. You want to lose all your money? Go to their banks. Every massive institution is just crawling with corruption. You can make the superbug analogies through any of those areas. And again, why has all this been caused? Oh, because we've overused antibiotics, because we've never looked at causing the problems. We look at solutions. We look at Band-Aids. We look at gigantic, expensive boondoggles that we can blow money on, and all my buddies get contracts. That's the way this shit works, and that's why it doesn't work so well. An interesting story out of Chicago, and again, most of these stories submitted by you. If you've got stories going on in your backyard, literally or figuratively, love to hear them using hashtag food order. Or, of course, you can always just email me, james@MediaMonarchy.com. I don't have time to reply to everyone, but I love getting the tips, and I love hearing from you. Ban on Irish butter in Wisconsin sends shoppers across state lines.
It's a substance so illegal, stores here in the dairy state can be fined for selling it.
The great irony, that substance is butter.
The I-Team's Steve Shamraz has been looking into this illegal butter and is here with what he's uncovered.
Guys, consumers have been fuming on social media about this for months because a Wisconsin law protecting butter producers means they can't buy a foreign butter with a cult-like following. Jean Smith admits it. She likes to skip the most important meal of the day.
I'm not a big breakfast eater.
Breakfast is usually a cup of cinnamon tea blended with butter. And not just any butter will do.
I tried Kerrygold. There's no question about the taste.
Morning, ladies. Kerrygold is an Irish butter. Just like you see in this commercial, the cows eat nothing but Irish grass, which Jean says makes this unlike any butter made in the USA.
It's not. You can do a taste test. You have to do a taste test and see, I guess, but it definitely has a different, richer taste.
But that's not why she has a couple months' supply of Kerrygold in her fridge. This stash, as she calls it, is because Kerrygold is illegal to sell in Wisconsin.
Whoever it is that's preventing me from getting butter in our stores here to stop it. Just stop it.
And she is hardly alone. Social media has been flooded with angry Wisconsin shoppers who can't buy their butter. What's going on? Wisconsin Statute 97-176 spells it out. It is unlawful to sell any butter here unless it has been tested by industry experts and graded. As a butter made in Ireland, Kerrygold is not graded in the US of A. So in 2015, the company was told to stop sending it to Wisconsin.
Is this unique to Wisconsin?
So far, yes.
Lisa Miller is marketing director for Ornua North America. That's the Irish dairy cooperative marketing Kerrygold in every U.S. state except Wisconsin.
Our process of inspecting is just a little bit different from the process here, but the standards are universally very high.
For Wisconsin, not high enough. State statute spends pages describing the steps needed to sell butter.
I think you get suspicious and you go, who are you really trying to protect? Are you protecting the consumers? Are you protecting Wisconsin dairies?
And the enforcer, Wisconsin's Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, says Kerrygold is working to get in line. Quote, they have made a conscious effort to follow Wisconsin laws and are adapting to the labeling requirements.
We're working on some options that will meet their requirements for the way the inspection process has to work.
Until Kerrygold and the state work this out, Jean Smith will keep doing what she's done for the past year. Drive to Nebraska and bring her butter back across state lines.
I don't know. I just think it's a little goofy that this exists and I can get it in any other state that I travel in, and I'm hauling Kerrygold back in my suitcase and my coolers.
This butter grading law has been on the books since at least the 1970s. Selling illegal butter, well, that could get you fined up to $1,000. It could send you to jail for at least 6 months. Kerrygold cheese, by the way, completely legal to sell in Wisconsin.
Who knew?
Thank you, Steve.
Who knew, indeed. Odd state law forces illegal butter off store shelves. So if you're keeping score, it is okay for you to lick sodium benzoate off of your video game cartridges. But you can't choose which butter you like. And in a lot of places, you can't choose which milk you like either. And again, this is the question. This is the world. Either you are free human beings or you are not. Either you live in a place that lets consenting adults do as they wish, or we don't. Not a lot of middle room, not a lot of wiggle room. And perhaps it's never more obvious than in the case of weed. In an effort to push back against the repressive federal controls of marijuana policy, bipartisan legislation was introduced in Congress by Representatives Tom Garrett, Republican of the aforementioned Virginia, and Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat of Hawaii, to exclude cannabis from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, CSA, which of course absurdly lists marijuana as a Schedule I substance, a classification that denotes a substance being dangerous and having no known medicinal value. Passage of this legislation would provide states with the exclusive authority to regulate marijuana how they see fit, without the ominous threat of federal criminalization. In a prepared statement, Representative Garrett explained that the states are more than capable of deciding what policies best benefit their own citizens without the need for federal oversight. If passed, this bill would take marijuana off the federal controlled substances list, joining other industries such as alcohol and tobacco. Passage of the Ending Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2017. That's the phrase that pays. That's the title if you want to look it up. And again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes, so you can read the language of these bills. You can look at the research, watch the videos, etc. Passage of the Ending Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2017 would remove cannabis from the CSA so that it would no longer be listed as a substance regulated by federal law. This bipartisan legislation would empower states to establish their own marijuana regulations, which would allow for more flexibility in creating what kind of butter you're allowed to have. Yeah, see, it works both ways. It just depends on what kind of shitty state you might live in. This piece of legislation comes, of course, at an important time, as we're trying to guess and figure out what Trumpery's going to do. What is America's next top president going to do with weed? But the same way that we also talk about food, we talk about cannabis and we talk about hemp. It's been one of the most successful pushback ways. You know, we finally did a long-awaited Good News Next Week episode. You can get it up on the YouTube channel. Just like you might be able to get this entire episode of Your Morning Monarchy up on the YouTube channel. We've been at least trying to post one entire episode up to YouTube. Your hour-long Morning Monarchy. Just as a way to hopefully maybe grab more folks. Putting up those little teasers might not get people in as much as going, oh, he does an entire show. Now, I am taking the content hits for the song at the end, which might be a deal breaker in some cases. But for the most part, we're playing smaller indie bands. The robots still pick it up, but they allow us to use it, and it still should be viewable in all the countries and all that stuff. So that's a really important sidebar. You might notice in so many Good News Next Week episodes, a lot of the good news centers around food and cannabis. It's that sort of nullification. If you stop buying that shit, they're going to change. If you plant weed everywhere, it's going to grow. And if you give people the choice of cannabis over opioids, guess which one they choose? Chronic pain sufferers and those taking mental health meds would rather turn to cannabis instead of their prescribed opioid medication, according to a new study. The study is one of the first to track medical cannabis use under the new system of licensed producers, meaning that all participants had physician authorization to access cannabis in addition to their prescription medicines, says UBC Associate Professor Zach Walsh, co-author of this study. Tracked more than 250 patients with prescribed medical cannabis, people treated for conditions such as chronic pain, mental health, gastrointestinal issues. Overall, 63% of the respondents reported using cannabis instead of their prescription drugs, which included opioids to treat pain, benzodiazepines, sedatives, and antidepressants, which, of course, ironically make you depressed and kill yourself. Study lead Philippe Lucas is vice president of patient research and access at Tilray, a federally authorized medical cannabis production and research company, and a doctoral student at the University of Victoria Center for Addictions Research of BC. So that's where we are. So this is coming from the University of British Columbia. So, well, shit. They're talking about Canada. They ain't talking about America. Spoiler alert, womp womp. You don't get to choose cannabis in the States. At least not yet. This is what I try and constantly say to West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who hasn't blocked me on Twitter. I guess there are a few of those accounts that's like, wow, I'm really relentless on them. I'm surprised they haven't blocked me. Seventh Generation, who sold out to Unilever, I lambast them regularly. And remind them how I stopped using their products because they sold out to Unilever. And also Joe Manchin, who just the other day was talking about, oh, there's this great new bill that essentially continues to empower the same big pharma drug dealers that have helped cause this problem in the first place. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Guys, I saw back in West Virginia. Last time I was there, Obama flew in. So he could go to one of those drug things. Oh, West Virginia. Oh, you got the worst ODs. Oh, you got the worst opioid addiction in America. There were veterans out there that basically had shirts and signs that said, don't thank me, help me. Let me use the medicine I find that helps me. Now, we mentioned, what did we mention? Were we mentioning liquor and, alcohol and tobacco. Let's leave the tobacco out of this, as, again, I'll remind you, coming up this summer will be my 5-year mark of quitting cigarettes, cold turkey. But there's a piece up on Foundation for Economic Education. No two drugs have defined human civilization the way alcohol and caffeine have. Nature created both to kill creatures much smaller than us. Plants evolved caffeine to inject poison insect predators, and yeasts produce ethanol to destroy competing microbes. True to its toxic origin, alcohol kills 3.3 million people each year, bringing about 5.9% of all deaths and 25% of deaths among people aged 20 to 39. I'm going to get out of that bracket here in a few months. Alcohol, of course, causes liver disease, many cancers, and other devastating health and social issues. On the other hand, research suggests that alcohol may have helped create civilization itself. This story goes on through a little bit of drunken history and some pre-Starbucks fueling of caffeine. You are listening to The Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato for MediaMonarchy.com. Let's get a cup of coffee.
That's it. I'm getting 100 cups of coffee, starting now. Coffee machine, 1 cup of coffee, please.
Smells good.
Yeah, keep it coming. Put the pot down. Get away. This isn't Yemeni, it's Sulawesi. And the cup's shaking. I don't want my coffee shaking.
You seem a tad wound up, buddy, and your face is greasy. Real greasy. You been up all night?
Of course I've been up all night. Not because of caffeine, it was insomnia. I couldn't stop thinking about coffee. I need a nap. Coffee time!
Mighty fine smokable.
Fancy cigar. Why don't you smoke it already? Puff, puff. Go, 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 go.
Nah, you can't blow the smoke from such a majestic stogie in just anyone's face. I'm saving it for the fancy pantsers at Zap Brannigan's black tie reception. You coming?
The alternative media, Jerry. That's where you hear the truth.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Gorging on bacon, skimping on nuts. These are among food habits that new research links with deaths from heart disease, strokes, and diabetes. You are still listening to your Morning Monarchy Food World Order edition for Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. Oh, it's that Women's March Day, created by convicted murderers and terrorists. Overeating or not eating enough of the 10 foods and food nutrients contributes to nearly half of U.S. deaths from these causes. Good foods that were undereaten include nuts and seeds, seafoods rich in omega-3 fats including salmon and sardines, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Perhaps you've heard of those things. Bad foods or nutrients that were overeaten include salt, salty foods, processed meats like bacon, bologna, and hot dogs, red meat including steaks and hamburgers, sugary drinks. Perhaps you've heard of those foods. The research is based on U.S. government data showing there were about 700,000 deaths in 2012 from heart disease, stroke, and diabetes, and on an analysis of national health surveys that asked participants about their eating habits. Most didn't eat the recommended amounts of food studies. The 10 ingredients combined contributed to about 45% of those deaths. So again, shocker, this just in. Fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and good seafood are good for you. Oh, everybody's talking in the chat about being addicted to coffee. Now, I was going to say a thing about hot dogs. Haven't had a hot dog in a while because Applegate, the one decent provider of all beef hot dogs, hey, guess what? They sold out to Hormel. So guess what? I'm not buying you anymore. Trying to keep track of who owns what can be a pain in the ass. But it sure makes you feel better when you know what's on your shelf is still an independent company. And we now live in a world where you can let those companies know, hey, you suck. I stopped using you. You're sellouts. Go fuck yourself. See, I even just felt better doing that right then. So as long as we're talking about this diet, this comes down to a lot of the delusions of America. the way that we perceive ourselves, the way that we believe ourselves to be. I mean, even Chuck Klosterman talks in his latest book, But What If We're Wrong, how people perceive themselves now to have been so adamantly against the Bush-Gore election. Oh, man, I really made a stink. When you go back and you look at it, it's not true. People now put on the guise of actually having stood up, but they didn't. We believe ourselves to be more healthy than we are. And you can look at that health in any number of ways if you want to look at it spiritually or emotionally, or how about just plain ass physically. Obesity is becoming more socially accepted in America, even as poor diet has been established as a culprit of almost half the deaths from heart disease, 2 new studies show. Fewer overweight Americans have attempted to lose weight in recent years, according to researchers at Georgia Southern University, who have published a new study in the Journal of American Medicine, AMA. The study's lead author, Dr. Jian Zhang, said obesity is increasingly normalized or tolerated, therefore dissuading some from attempting to lose excess pounds. Quote, socially accepted normal body weight is shifting towards heavier weight. As more people around us are getting heavier, we simply believe we are fine and no need to do anything with it. Now, after living in Oregon for a couple of years and I would go back to visit West Virginia, I could immediately see it. Oh, my God, that's right. Everybody's way heavier here. I've also maybe mentioned, and I did get a smack from my neighbor for using the F word. I said I knew Portland was changing a lot when I could look out my window and see fat people. Because fat people are moving here. Because regular old conventional boring ass soda swilling people are moving here. And it's not going to have that oh so cool vibe. Wah, wah, wah. Now, I think I have a story on the stack for Friday when we get into media memes and we start to discuss the entertainment industrial complex. There's some kind of Nike women story where they're using plus-sized models. As again, the powers that shouldn't be in the entertainment industrial complex and those pulling those levers and pulling those strings up the pyramid, you know, kind of how that pyramid works. Normalizing it all. Oh, pedophiles aren't evil. They're just misunderstood. Oh, obese people aren't healthy and at risk of early death. You just need to accept that. Cannibalism is normal. Everybody's done it. Let's just all normalize all of it. As they rush us to try and just upload our consciousness to the cloud. And remember, there is no such thing as a cloud. There's just other people's computers. Now, I've talked about some of my health issues recently, anxiety issues and otherwise. You can't let your health go to crap and then suddenly in a weekend think, oh, I'm going to juice and run and everything will be okay by Monday, right? No. You can work really hard to do well in school, but completely ruin your GPA with one crappy semester and work the rest of your time to try and get your GPA back up. Yeah, I didn't do that. So I generally run 2 miles a day and have been adding in other little miniature workouts, just using alarms on my fondle slab to go, oh, it's 1 o'clock. Drop and do some push-ups. So you think you're doing all right? Oh, I think I'm doing okay. But then you hear you might need to walk 7 miles a day to compensate for a desk job?
My name is Professor Kim Fox. I'm a consultant cardiologist at the Royal Brompton Hospital. Coronary heart disease is narrowing of the coronary arteries supplying blood to the heart. You, as a patient, will notice chest pain when you exert yourself. The doctor may call this angina. What is happening is the blood supply to the heart is not adequate when you're walking, hence the heart responds by causing pain in the chest. Typically, the chest pain comes on when you're walking and when you're under stress and goes away when you stop walking or the stress goes away. If the pain is prolonged after walking, or if the pain comes on at rest and is prolonged, then there's a risk that you're having a heart attack. And those would be the circumstances when you need to call urgent medical attention. Angina is important because in patients who have angina, there is a risk in the future that they may go on to develop a heart attack. However, the first thing I'd like to say to you is that angina and people with angina who have coronary heart disease, the prognosis, the outcome is excellent. The first thing that needs to happen when you've been told that you may have coronary disease because you present with chest pain angina is that you'll need to have some investigations that will determine whether or not you do have the condition, because many people have chest pain and in the end don't have anything wrong with their heart at all. If that shows that you do have angina, that does show that you therefore have coronary artery disease, you'll then be, the situation will be discussed with your doctor, who will then consider a number of treatments which can usually completely alleviate all the symptoms.
Usually completely. Spending too much time sitting down is bad for your heart. We know that. We've known this. That ties in with actually my unfortunate switch. So pretty much through 2016, when I set my nose to the grindstone of being Media Monarchy Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I realized, oh, crap, I don't really have much workout time in there, because then at 5 o'clock, I got to be house husband. I got to get cooking and cleanings. So I have been running more, and I have been running again. However, I notice I've been running at around 5 in the afternoon. That's kind of the worst time for me. You're out there, it's all the yuppies, it's all the cars, it's all getting off of work. I should really get up earlier and run in the morning. Even at the commercial radio job, the way the consoles and the things are built, you know, everybody has big, gigantic, floaty swivel chairs and things. But the way the desks and the studios and the boards are built, you can just stand there. I never sat at the morning show job. I got there and kicked the chair out of the way and put my bags and junk on top of it. It keeps me up. It keeps me moving. It keeps me dancing around. I periscoped some of the Moonlight Monarchy DJ set we did a couple of Fridays ago. You can see me on there. I was like, oh, that boy's got ants in his pants. I need to move. I want to keep moving. I stopped drinking caffeine in 2012. I still drink coffee. I just drink decaf. I realized I didn't need the caffeine. I like it for the ritual. I like it for the flavor. But here I am at home, and I'm sitting at least 2 hours a day doing these shows. And then probably more while I'm doing pre- and post-production. Reconfiguring my desk setup at home would be nice to make it a little stand-up. So as we start to wrap up the Food World Order edition of Your Morning Monarchy, I said it was going to be a little bit of a Soylent sandwich. And we're going to follow up a little bit with a weird story that we hit last week that continues to unfold. And okay, guys, confession time. I probably go to Subway maybe twice a year. And it's probably when Cassie's gone, out of town, isn't going to be back home, isn't a proper dinner time. It's right down the street. It's right next to the weed store. I get a foot-long tuna. Tuna, hopefully better, hopefully brain food, hopefully 100% tuna, unlike the chicken. Subway releases data after scientists weigh in on the 50% chicken test. And the headline I originally got from Ars Technica, it looks like they've altered it. Food scientists weigh in on 50% Subway chicken test. It's 100% weird. And yes, Bumblebee, the tuna, it's all rich tapestry. Subway has released the lab reports from both of its independent tests. Both Maxam Analytics in Ontario, Canada, and ELISA Technologies in Florida used enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays, ELISA, E-L-I-S-A, designed for fruit products to quantify the soy in the chicken. ELISAs are a standard type of assay that generally detects and quantifies substances based on binding by an antibody. In the assay, antibody binding kicks off a detectable chemical reaction, commonly resulting in a color change. In the case of ELISA Technologies, the labs used an antibody that binds to soy flour proteins, and the lab used known concentrations of those soy proteins for comparison to determine the quantity of soy protein in Subway's chicken samples. In all samples, ELISA detected 3 parts per million or less of soy proteins, which is well below 1% of the chicken. Maxim detected 5.3 parts per million of soy protein in the chicken, which is still well below 1%. So what is this essentially saying? Well, we know that only half of it is chicken. What we can't figure out is what the hell the other half is.
The next time you get a footlong at Subway with chicken on it, ask what you're actually biting into. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation tested chicken at 5 major fast food restaurants. Wendy's, McDonald's, you get the idea. Most of the scores were between 85 and 90% chicken DNA. And then there's Subway. 2 popular chicken sandwiches they serve had only about half chicken DNA. The oven-roasted chicken came in at 53.6% chicken DNA. And the sweet onion chicken teriyaki strips had just 42.8%, according to the investigation. Subway's results were so shocking, the team tested them again. So what else is in the meat? Soy. That's according to the DNA testing. Subway Canada defended themselves in a statement saying, "Our chicken strips and oven-roasted chicken contain 1% or less of soy protein. We use this ingredient in these products as a means to help stabilize the texture and moisture." They go on to say all of their chicken items are made from 100% white meat chicken, and they're going to look into the findings with their supplier. As for Wendy's grilled chicken sandwich, that had nearly 90% chicken DNA. The grilled country chicken sandwich from McDonald's had just under 85%, according to the findings. Both companies released statements saying they also use only 100% chicken. Either way, the news is hard to swallow for customers and the companies.
So your chicken is made out of soy. Your bread is made out of gym mat materials. That, in a nutshell, so to speak, is why we call it the Food World Order. Now, all those stories we put together ahead of time on a Twitter moment. You can find all those at twitter.com/MediaMonarchy/moments. Holy crap. Anarchy Ball, seemingly apropos of nothing, tweeted yesterday's cyberspace war moment that held all of our stories. So I had to reply. I was like, hey, you can also hear the show I made out of those show notes, and gave the link to yesterday's episode. So that's good stuff. It's nice seeing the way the connections are made and they start to ratchet out and ricochet out there in the world, because all the cliches are true. Truth is a virus, and it's popular, and they can't stop it. So we post all those stories about an hour before showtime, so you can get all of those stories. And if you're sitting in the cube, and if you are able, perhaps you're standing up in your studio, you can get all those stories that we've discussed. Some of those being submitted by our buddy Ray Vahi, some of them being submitted by our buddy Sean Cathcart, some of them being submitted by Eric Moshe, some by Matt Houghton, and a lot of them by Media Monarchy. Holy moly, it's been 17 years since Relationship of Command, the brutal, amazing album put out in the year 2000 by the late great band At the Drive-In. Guess what? As was the style, they've reunited. They've got a brand new record coming out on May 5th. And we've got a taste of it at the end of this episode. However, you got to take a stroll down this day in history, my friends. Past is prologue. March 8th, 1775, an anonymous writer, thought by some to be Thomas Paine, publishes African slavery in America. Or what? This is where I would insert whatever the shit Ben Carson said yesterday about undocumented workers. African slavery in America, the first article in the American colonies calling for emancipation. Going against that, March 8th, 1817, the New York Stock Exchange was founded on this day. 100 years later, International Women's Day protests in St. Petersburg mark the beginning of the February Revolution. You might also know it as the Bolshevik Revolution. March 8th, 1949, Mildred Gillers, a.k.a. Axis Sally, is condemned to prison for treason. And on this day, 1965, Vietnam heats up as 3,500 United States Marines are the first American land combat forces committed during the Vietnam War. March 8th, 1968, the Fillmore East opened in New York City as Bill Graham expands his rock and roll empire. March 8th, 1978, the first radio episode of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, transmitted on BBC4. 1979, on this day, Philips demonstrates the compact disc publicly for the first time. And I often mention Stephen Witt's book, How Music Got Free. Philips also behind the creation of the MP3 as well. Now, on this day, March 8th, 1983, my friends, while addressing a convention, of course, of evangelical Christians, Ronald Reagan said these things.
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
Which country are you talking about?
It was C.S. Lewis who, in his unforgettable Screwtape letters, wrote, "The greatest evil is not done now in those sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not even done in concentration camps and labor camps. In those we see its final result. But it is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clear, carpeted, warmed, and well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voice." Well, because these quiet men do not raise their voices, because they sometimes speak in soothing tones of brotherhood and peace, because like other dictators before them, they're always making their final territorial demand, some would have us accept them at their word and accommodate ourselves to their aggressive impulses. But if history teaches anything, it teaches that simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. It means the betrayal of our past, the squandering of our freedom. So I urge you to speak out against those who would place the United States in a position of military and moral inferiority. You know, I've always believed that old Screwtape reserved his best efforts for those of you in the church. So in your discussions of the nuclear freeze proposals, I urge you to beware the temptation of pride, the temptation of blithely declaring yourselves above it all and label both sides equally at fault, to ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding, and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong and good and evil.
There he is, the former head of the Screen Actors Guild, gangster frontman for MCA, governor of California, and yes, that's right, he was at one time America's next top president. Continuing this day in history, and perhaps something far more important culturally, on this day in 1993, Beavis and Butthead premiered on MTV. And on March 8th, 2014, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, carrying 239 people, completely disappears en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Now, I've said I've been online since 9/11/05, and there are 11,000 plus articles, so let's look at a couple of them published March 8th, 2007 to MediaMonarchy.com. Homeland Security revives Super Snoop, testing a Super Snoop computer that sifts through personal information on U.S. citizens to detect possible terror attacks. That sounds vaguely germane to today's news. Israel unveils portable hunter-killer robot, billed as being capable of entering most combat zones alone and engaging enemies. All right, yeah, that sounds about normal. Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon pushes for release of CIA's 9/11 report, foolishly believing that the American people have a right to know how the CIA performed prior to 9/11. That's Oregon's Ron Wyden. All those stories published 10 years ago today to MediaMonarchy.com. Again, another great way I hope I can point out that not only past is prologue, but that we've been trying to keep the empire honest for quite some time. It's many puppet presidents back. Celebrating birthdays today, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Neil Postman, Gabor Szabo, the Hungarian guitarist and composer, will begin your Pump Up the Volume daily DJ set at noon, coming up in just over 2 hours. That always starts with vinyl. It's also Lynn Redgrave, Mickey Dolenz, Gary Newman's birthday, Aidan Quinn, Gaz Coombs from Supergrass, and the two fantastic actors Freddie Prinze Jr. and James Van Der Beek. Some of those musical folks will weasel their way into our daily DJ set at noon, most likely some Gary Newman and Gabor Szabo and some Supergrass. But right now, the second taste from their upcoming record, Interalia, At the Drive-In, has reformed, and we are going to listen to Incurably Innocent, and it might get loud, my friends. At the Drive-In, your song of the day, wrapping up your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, March 8th, 2017, the Food World Order edition. So glad you're here, and I appreciate you being here. Again, I invite you to join us in just about 2 hours. We'll do our daily DJ set at noon, same place, right here, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Our news in the morning, our music in the afternoon, and we will be taping episode 301 of New World next week a little bit later today. It is all brought to you by you, my friends. A huge thanks to all our subscribers, patrons, and supporters at MediaMonarchy.com/support. This is your Food World Order, Wednesday edition, March 8th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Thanking you again so much for listening and reminding you, as always, my friends, like Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedy said, don't hate the media. Become the media. Take care.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.